2014, my colleague, Professor Gonzalo Guzman, found a story in an obscure newspaper in Wyoming. It was about how Mexican Americans were challenging school segregation in Alamosa in 1914. The story, however, was vague. It did not give details. Professor Guzman and I had a conversation. After contacting the Alamosa County Courthouse to see if such case existed, the clerk said she would conduct a search.
I remember when the academics wanted access to the case file. Even though I'm a district court judge in Alamosa, I knew nothing about the case. After getting the request, I authorized a search of the archives for the case file. Frankly, given how old it was, I was surprised we found it. Recognizing what the case meant, I kept a copy, and we sent the documents off to the academics, who later on published an article in the Journal of Latinos in Education. I read it. That's when I directed my research attorney to contact Ruben. The case, Francisco Maestas et al. Versus George Shone et al. Appears to be one of the earliest Mexican-American challenges to school segregation in the United States, if not the earliest. The Maestas case took place in Alamosa, my hometown. I'm a fourth-generation Hispano to the San Luis Valley, with roots in New Mexico going back centuries. I'm the first Hispanic district judge appointed to the 12th Judicial District. As such, I'm a successor judge to the judge that ruled in the case. This historical context explains why the case was important to me. The struggle that led to the case began when Francisco Maestas and his family moved to the north side, the Anglo side of town in Alamosa. Mr. Maestas wanted to send his son Miguel to the school closest to his home, the North Side School. Miguel was denied admission to that school. Instead, the school officials ordered Mr. Maestas to enroll his son in the Mexican school, where all Mexicanos were required to attend. This school, the Mexican school, was further from his home and across the tracks.
Mr. Maestas made several complaints to school officials. His complaints fell on deaf ears. As a result, the Mexican-American community organized. They staged a boycott, and with the help of a local priest, they raised money in the community, and they hired an attorney from Denver. They hired Raymond Sullivan.
This case is unique because Mexican-American plaintiffs, my gente, maintained their children were being denied admission to the white school. Why? Because they were racially distinct as Mexicanos. That this was segregation. That this was illegal because the Colorado Constitution prohibited classifying and distinguishing public school children on the basis of color and race.
Defendants, school board members, and a superintendent, in response, argued that Mexican-American children were Caucasian. They said that Mexican-American children were no different than other white children in the school district. The legal construction of race for Mexican-Americans had a complicated history in the United States. It was complicated because the American government granted American citizenship to Mexicans living in the newly seceded territory after the U.S.-Mexican War in 1848, an area that included Alamosa. The naturalization of Mexican citizens suggested they had white status because naturalization was limited to white persons during that time.
The school board and superintendent argued they were not segregating Mexican American students based upon race, but that it was appropriate to segregate them based upon language. That non-English speaking Mexican American children required specialized education in a separate building. However, Judge Holbrook found that the school officials were in fact sending all Mexican American students to the Mexican school, regardless of their English language abilities.
The judge, in fact, had Mexican American children come to the courtroom when the case was being tried. They had an interpreter. When the interpreter asked questions to the Mexican American children in Spanish, the children immediately responded in English before the interpreter finished asking the questions. The children were bilingual. They were Americans. They had deep roots in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. Judge Charles Holbrook ruled in favor of Francisco Maestas in 1914. The judge decided the school officials could not prevent English-speaking Mexican American children from attending schools of their choice. Miguel and his classmates were allowed to attend schools that were closer to their homes.
The Maestas case appears to be the first successful Mexican American challenge to school segregation in the United States. Its importance seems self-evident, but sadly unknown. We've formed a committee made up of academics, lawyers, judges, descendants of the Maestas family, and community members. And we've begun the work to tell the world about the case. To date, we have been interviewed by NBC News, Rocky Mountain PBS, Colorado Public Radio, and featured in the National Parks magazine. In 2022, the Colorado legislature, by joint resolution, recognized the Maestas case as an important event in Colorado history. The committee to commemorate the case hired a well-known artist, Reginaldo Sonny Rivera, to sculpt a relief depicting the case. This relief was placed in the entrance to the Alamosa Courthouse on October 1st of 2022, an event witnessed by a standing room only crowd. A traveling statue was also created, which will be placed in various locations throughout Colorado. We, along with many individuals, especially those with roots to the San Luis Valley, celebrate this historic but forgotten case.
Thinking back, I am grateful that Judge Gonzalez brought people together and formed a committee. I am honored to be part of a group that understands the importance of this case. I consider this project to be one of the proudest moments in my professional career, to be part of a project that brought history to life.
Sadly, most people in the United States learn a history that does not mention or understand our Hispano heritage in northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. We've been forged out of relative isolation, surviving drought, poverty, and the benign neglect of Spanish, Mexican, and United States political systems. Out of this, we became culturally unique and came to understand the importance of education to our survival. The Maestas case underscores how important education is to us and the willingness of my gente to organize against great adversity to achieve equal education. It shows our hope. It shows our inspiration. It shows our certainty that we Hispanos are meaningful to this ever more complex society. We want to end with a corrido.
A corrido is a popular Mexican musical tale that forms a ballad. Corridos are often about oppression, history, violence, and socially relevant topics. Dr. Antonio Esquibel wrote a corrido about the Francisco Maestas case and will perform a short version of this ballad.
In 1914, in Alamosa pasó the fight with the school. Don Francisco ganó. Alamosa had 2 schools donde tenían que andar. Miguel and his sister traques tenían que cruzar. From Denver, the lawyer Sullivan les contestó, I will help you in your fight. Y el pleito comenzó. In March of that year, Judge Holbert declaró, attend the nearest school. Y así lo mando yo.